Jake, what should we tell them about this video?
Hey, do you guys like cards and do you like money? Well, if you like either of those things, this is the video for you, and it starts right now.
Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. Standard and Pioneer is what we're talking about. We got to talk about Embercleave, we got to talk about Lotus Field, and we got to talk about GP, or whatever you want to call it, PT Phoenix 2020. But first, if you like the video by the end of it, consider subscribing.
Yes, consider subscribing, consider liking, consider sharing, consider being aware, consider wearing a suit, consider playing the flute. Consider it done.
All right.
We're starting it now.
You are Dr. Seuss today, and what we've got today is our weekly changers. It is Tuesday, February 11th, as you are listening and watching, however you're consuming this YouTube video today. Embercleave is all the way up to $19 because it is the aggro finisher. Lotus Field is getting up into the $7, $8 range because it has been huge in a deck called Lotus Breach, which we're going to talk about. And GP Phoenix had some interesting top 8 stuff. So let's talk about Embercleave first.
So yeah, all right. So Joel, with Embercleave, let me get this straight.
Yeah.
You play a lot of Standard. Obviously, Standard loves Embercleave, right?
Aggro loves Embercleave. Aggro is a deck because of, in my opinion, Anax and Embercleave. Those two cards are a house. Let me, this is one of the versions of the deck that skews a little heavier for 4 Bone Crusher and 3 Torbrand. Also, it allows red, but by itself it wasn't enough. We saw that last rotation. Also, we've got mono red aggro that goes more aggressive for more 2-drops and only 6 total 3-drops, not counting Light Up the Stage or Embercleave because you want to play those for cheaper.
So I know we're talking about Embercleave, but I do think after you said this, Anax, I think if this is the kind of card that you like, just consider the foil showcase art on this card is still pretty cheap. And if this card continues to be a reckoning force in Standard, people are going to seek out those most pimp versions.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this could be a good pickup.
So Anax a lot of times will steal games because your opponents will do the math incorrectly. Anax's power is equal to your devotion to red, and Embercleave adds 2 more devotion to red at instant speed as it hits the battlefield. So that's just a little note for you burn players out there, anybody playing against this deck, which right now I would imagine is every freaking person on the ladder because this is the deck you run into every time you queue.
Yeah, I think that that's super interesting. I haven't been playing a lot of Standard, so I'm happy that you have, Joel. But yeah, this is a really interesting direction. Another card that I'm excited to see popping up in more red lists is Bone Crusher Giant.
I knew you were going to say it.
If you guys follow our channel, if you follow us, you know that we're always talking about Bone Crusher Giant. These cards, Bone Crusher, Fae of Wishes, Murderous Rider. What's the other one I'm forgetting? It's a standout. Either way, these showcase cards, these storybook cards have an effect. Oh, Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, I was going to say
the
Bouncing Fairy.
Yeah, so all of these cards are super strong, and just having an effect that you're able to do and then bring a creature back for an additional cost.
Yeah.
It's like being able to play something out of your graveyard. I mean, that's precisely like what it is, but it's really interesting. And,
so as far as
I think it's cool.
As far as finance guides go here, I mean, at this point, Embercleave is maxing out. I doubt.
So it's time to sell.
Yeah,
it's time to sell, baby.
It's time to sell, really. Yeah, if you're holding these, absolutely unload your Embercleaves, unless you want to play this deck. I mean, look at this. In paper, this deck is $140. By Standard terms, by any MTG deck terms, that is cheap, okay? $75 of that is just for Embercleaves. That's what I'm saying. This deck is a very affordably, easily played deck, but you got to get 4 Embercleaves.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, but now it isn't just Standard that loves Embercleave, right? It's also Pioneer.
That's why it's pumping up into the $20 range instead of just sticking around 10 to 15. This, if it was Standard playable and it was allowing this deck right now being a Mythic, I would say it would be living in here. But because it's also the enabler for aggro decks in Pioneer, you know, and I mean, it's also got some EDH playability. It's just a really good card all around. But
it's
Pioneer
that double
Standard,
strike and trample, man.
It's the trample. It's the trample.
It's the trample, dude. Trample is the word.
Right.
That's the word that, I mean, this is just so affordable, and the fact that when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control.
Right.
Part of me thinks that there's still room to grow on this card, but part of me says, if you bought it for a low price, lock in your gains. If you're not using it, there's no telling what Wizards of the Coast is going to do these days. They could ban it. I don't think they're going to.
Right.
But it's really interesting, and I'm happy that we're talking about it.
So the other thing about Anax is, it's got the built-in board wipe protection. That's another reason it has to be exiled. That's another reason why this deck is allowed. And the other finance little tip I wanted to mention was piggybacking on Jake with Bone Crusher Giant. He's on long hold with these, okay? So because of the value present and because of the low mana costs, especially of this one, which instants for 2 and casts for 3. Think about the other one, Brazen Borrower. Instants for 2, casts for 3. They've both got their different drawbacks, but they both present double value on a card. I mean, I don't want to argue about math, but I'm just going to say double value.
Yeah, sure. And it's just that 4/3 beater that even if you target it, it has a little bit of built-in protection because it's going to deal 2 to the spell's controller.
Right.
I think that as we get deeper in, I'm starting to see this card pop up in Pioneer, in 4-ofs index. I'm starting to see it more and more in Standard. This is something that I kind of looked at and it was obvious to me, so I was buying these storybook foils when they were as low as $3 to $5. So I think I have maybe 16 foil showcase Bone Crusher Giants that the card started off, you can see it. It started
there
off
was about a month where a paper copy non-foil was $2.
Yeah, and it's starting to creep back up, and I think that as players become more experienced in the game, you start to find these cards that have an undeniability about them. And the cards that are undeniable, the cards that have this power, people discover that power from playtesting them. And these are the cards that start to pop up more. And this is one of those cards where I look at it now and I know that it's a format staple. I know it's an eternal format staple in Pioneer, and I think that, despite the fact that Throne was opened a lot, it's still really good.
This is a heartening graph for a long hold, how it just slowly creeps up. We'll see if it stays in Pioneer, because that's really going to be a format that's going to be decided in the next couple weeks, how they slow down some of these combo decks that have started emerging, so that they can leave it at mid-range decks battling against aggro. Everybody's all the decks are operating at generally the same speed. And then Bone Crusher Giant has a place in the meta. But, if it just continues to get faster and faster and they let faster decks evolve, then aggro mid-range is going to have a hard time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Moving over to Pioneer, since we're talking about it, Lotus Breach has had a lot of discussion around it lately. 5-0 finishes, 6-4 finish on this one that I pulled up at the PT Phoenix. Day 1, it was quite a bit of the meta, I believe. Has to do with Underworld Breach, has to do with Hidden Strings, and has to do with Lotus Field. Lotus Field is a card that is on the move for sure. Got down to $4 and we're up to almost $8.
Yeah, Lotus Field is one of those cards it's been on people's radar since it came out because it has such a unique and powerful ability. The hexproof on it is absolutely notable, but then also the fact that it is necessary because there's a lot of eggs in this basket here. So add 3 mana of any one color. This is always going to stick out to people, but people are starting to find out now with Hidden Strings and Pour Over the Pages that if you can untap this and start to use it over and over again, you could start to do some degenerate things with the mana that you have.
Yeah, that's exactly right. $8, Jake. I mean, what do you call with this one right now? Get out if you had them cheap, or hold on and see if the deck gets banned or not.
Well, I think the last thing that you said is the thing that's the most notable, is hold on and see if it gets banned or not. And I do think that that's kind of a troubling place to be in.
Yeah. It takes us to our last point. We see Dimir Inverter dominating last weekend's GP, And
yeah, we're going to talk about that too.
yeah, we see cards like Dig Through Time. I've been sitting on these, and I don't want to. At this point, I'm getting out of them, obviously, because I think it's going to be banned.
Yeah, it's just a huge enabler. Lotus Breach, the deck that we're looking at, only runs one copy of Dig Through Time, and I think that's what kind of saved Dig Through Time here, because at the EOT, you're paying 2 to look at the top 7 to grab 2 cards out of those at instant speed. I mean, that's just it's a lot. In a deck like Dimir Inverter, you need that velocity so that you can find those specific cards. But the more and more Dimir Inverter starts to pop up, the less I think that a card like Dig Through Time is going to be safe.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because they've designed it. They want this self-milling thing. It's obvious when you look at Jace, when you look at Thassa's Oracle. They want self-milling to be a thing, but if it's too easy to turn on, if it's too easy to abuse, then you have to look to Inverter of Truth or Dig Through Time, and it's going to come down to, it's not going to be the janky Mythic that gets banned. It's going to be the card that's been on a watch list. It's going to be the Dig Through Time.
Yeah, so I would say right now, Lotus Breaches are... It's a safe deck from many bans. Lotus Field, it's going to really depend on how the deck does, because
Lotus Field will never be banned.
Right.
I can't in 100 million years imagine them banning Lotus Field. Do I think there's room to grow from where it is? Well, it will depend on, does the deck get banned, or does it continue to thrive but also be fair? Then I could see Lotus Field going up. Foils are absolutely going to be at a premium, because that's going to be the showcase card of the deck.
Absolutely. It's all really for Pioneer. It's going to depend for me on what they do about Dimir Inverter going forward. If they let it be a format defining deck, if they let it be a format defining deck, most everything is going to have to play to beat this, especially when it's going to be played in such numbers. I mean, look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 8. And I'm sure that a bunch of people showed up with it if you looked at the percentage of that. But so
the more and more,
I just don't think anything in this is ban worthy, and I think that Underworld Breach is probably going to keep climbing as more people figure it out. And I think Lotus Field too has the potential to go up even further, maybe into the $12 range.
I would say if you didn't get in on Underworld Breach on those extended arts or those extended art foils, you had a short period of time when you would have been able to do that.
Yeah. These
aren't the kind of cards that I would be moving in on now. They are now holding a premium because all of these decks are in the limelight. So, any of these cards, if you're holding them, now is a good time to sell them. But Lotus Field, I do think is there's potential for growth. I don't think it's hit the ceiling. I think it's on an upward trend, and hopefully we don't see any bans. But when I look at more and more top 8s and I see only 3 decks represented in the top 8, 5 Dimir Inverter, 2 Bant Spirits, and 1 mono red Eldrazi deck, which is pretty much just like a mono red deck that runs 3 of the Obligators. And I think they have Thought Not Seer in the sideboard, so I guess sure, call it an Eldrazi deck, whatever. It just looks like mono red to me. But when you only have 3 decks represented in the top 8, that's when it gets dicey for me. That's when, if that continues to happen, Wizards of the Coast will step in. They want Pioneer to take off.
Let us know what you think is where Pioneer's headed. What's getting banned? Is Dimir Inverter going to stay around? What cards potentially like Lotus Field are primed, ready to go to explode as soon as Dimir Inverter is out of our face?
If you play a lot of Pioneer, I want to hear from you. I want you to be in the comments, and I want you to let me know what you're dealing with, what you think is a problem, and also what you think is really fair, or just the opportunity to explode. What do you think is going to take off?
Right. Yeah. We appreciate everybody watching. If you did like the video, hit subscribe. It really helps us out. If you want to support us further, we have a Patreon. The link is down in the description below. And depending on when you're watching this, we are giving away free t-shirts to anyone who signs up at any level right now. So go over there and see if you can take advantage of that so you don't miss out. If you want to hang out with us, we've got a Twitch. We stream most Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Jake, I've said it before and I've said it again. I will say it again. I'm tapped out.
Yeah, if you take a t-shirt, you can do a lot with it. You can wear it, you can cut it up, you can use it as like small bandages, you could try to tie it onto other shirts to escape from a window in a high building. I don't know if anyone's ever pulled that off, but I'm sure that some people have.